So for day 2 for the Every Bit Counts challenge, I was choosing to can some meat. I've been wanting to do that anyway. I was down to 1 jar of burger, venison burger left that I had canned a couple months ago. And so that was my plan. However, today was one of those days where I was gone for 12 hours. So I got home at 6 o'clock tonight, and then I had to set up. Because it's canning meat is one of those things that is a long process, I needed to bring the meat with me and brown it. So I brought 13.5 pounds of burger, venison burger with me, and I browned it, and then brought everything home on ice, and then I'm gonna start the process of canning. I have thought out a bunch of burger. This is venison burger, and I will be cooking it about 5 pounds at a time in the roaster in the oven for about 450. So I'm not looking to season this meat with anything in particular. I don't want it to be like really Italian or really hot, or it's soy tasty. I don't want it any particular, because I want to be able to pull it out of the jar and either put it in spaghetti sauce, or make a shepherd's pie, or put it in a lasagna, or just do a myriad of other things with it. So I just want it tasting like hamburger, but I want it to have some seasoning. So I'm using Author's Market Ultimate Seasoning Burger Seasoning. Now, for you folks back home, you know who you are if you're watching. If the Author's Market, I know it got bought out before I moved, if they still sell this, someone needs to get some and send it to me, because I am almost half out. I do not foresee any trips back to the Granite State in the future. So if anybody wants to send me one of these, that would be fantastic. So the first batch is cooling off, and the second batch has just gone in. I'm gonna put it in for probably there's 7.5 pounds, whereas the first batch was 5.5 pounds, so it may have to cook a little bit longer, but about every 20 minutes until it's done, I'll pull it out and stir it up, and till it's all browned and cooked through, and then let it cool off, and we'll go from there. So we're back home, and I have prepared the pressure cooker by means of putting water in and warming it up a little bit. I have my venison broth that I made a few months ago. Actually, I think I made this back in November, that I had canned from last winter's deer. This is smoked venison, so we put the bones through the smoker. I don't really like it. I like the roasted. I like when you do it in the oven. I don't like the smoky taste to it. But it's what I have to work with. I don't have any more. Going forward in this new season of deer season, I will be probably roasting all of it. Because I don't like it, I diluted it down a little bit, and I add a little bit of Better Than Bouillon to it, just to try and change the taste a little bit, so maybe it won't be quite so strong. I have my jars all sanitized, and a tip I got from one of the videos I watched recently was to, when you're keeping your jars warm, to keep them in the oven at 200 rather than, and prior to that I had always had them in a pot of water. I have a 4-burner stove, actually a 5-burner stove. One's a warming burner, just to keep warm. But only three of my burners actually work. So it makes things a lot more crowded. So having it in the oven has been very helpful. The last few times I've done any canning, I've had them in the oven, which I really liked. I'm using pint jars. Pint jars is generally recommended more when you're doing meat. And when you're doing meat, you have a pressure pan for safety's sake, you have to pressure can. So I'm gonna go ahead and start filling these jars. And put a teaspoon of salt. That's optional. I'm gonna put a teaspoon of salt in each pint jar. You guys can't really see what I'm doing, can you? Can't see the jars. Still can't see the jars. And then start filling up the ground burger. Put them in each jar, leaving a 1-inch headspace in each one. So the different things that you can are supposed to have different amount of headspace. I'm not sure why. I do know that I have put too much like liquid in things that needed liquid in them, and I haven't had a good seal, so probably has to do with that. One of the reasons why I like canning meat and having the burger, and a lot of times we'll take things that he had cut up as steak and make them into nuggets and or chunks. I never liked calling it chunks. I used to work in a seafood restaurant, and they have something like haddock chunks, and I'm like, that just sounds gross. Haddock nuggets sounds so much better. So I'm trying to say nuggets. So venison nuggets. The neat thing about it is you're canning it, you're preserving it, it's on the shelf, it's a grab and go. So you're running late, like an evening tonight. I would just take some of the meat. I didn't do this tonight because I knew I had more burger than what I was probably going to be canning tonight, so I threw that in some sauce. You don't have to cook it, you're just warming it up. It's so convenient, and the venison nuggets are so tender. You can compare venison nuggets that you have canned to having like slow roasting a roast, a pork roast, and you can shred it. Once you warm it up, you just shred it. It's so good, so easy, so convenient. I think a lot of us are looking for convenience as well as being economical. So I got 6 here filled so far. I'm gonna go ahead and get my liquid, the smoked broth. Pour that in to a 1-inch headspace. Now, get one of these and put that down in the jar, and you can measure how high the food is, or the liquid is. That's how much you want in there. Once you have your jars filled, you take some white vinegar and paper towel, wipe the rims to make sure there's no grease, because grease will prevent a good seal. And take the other end of your headspace measurer and just go around the sides of the jars just to make sure there's no bubbles. Adjust the liquid level or the food level if you need to get it back to the 1 headspace, because sometimes if there's a bubble it could really drop. take your lids, which have been warmed up, not boiled, but warmed up on the stove in water. And I'm using wide mouth lids in rings just because I find it easier to get the meat out of than the regular mouth. These little things that have a magnet on them, it's supposed to make it easier to pull them out of the water. Lids on, and then finger tight the rings. You don't want to have too much pressure. You want it to create its own pressure in holding on to the jar. And then you take your jar grabber and you just put it into the pressure canner. The pressure canner should have water that is a couple inches. You try and gauge it, because if you don't have enough, you don't want all the water evaporating while the steam is coming out. So sometimes you have to adjust it, adjust the level. Now I have room for 2 more jars. I'm going to go ahead and fill those up and then we'll come back. Now I have all 8 jars in the pressure canner. That's all it will hold. There are canners out there, like the American canner. You can actually double stack the jars, and the covers are easier to go on. This is an old Presto. So now I have this up high. I'm waiting for this valve to shoot up with the pressure that's building inside. And when it does, when it's standing up, it goes up about an inch. When it goes up, there'll be steam coming out of here. And when the steam has been coming out of there for a steady 10 minutes, then I'll put the valve on top, and then I just have to wait for it to start rocking. When it starts rocking, I can start timing it. And this is going to be for 75 minutes. And at which time I will adjust the heat and put the heat down a little bit. It doesn't need to go for a fierce rocking for the 75 minutes. It's supposed to be like a slow rocking off and on several times a minute, not a constant fierce steam. Now I still have probably 3/4 of a bag of hamburger left that I have prepared. Because this is going to be 75 minutes and it is 8:46 p.m., I'm not going to do a second batch tonight. I'm going to put that in the fridge. We'll maybe have something burger tomorrow night or the night after. I am home on Thursday and I will finish canning whatever meat is left. It'll be perfectly fine being stayed in the fridge, so I can put more away, but I'm not going to do a double session and go to bed at midnight tonight. So the little valve has popped up and it's starting to release pressure, the steam coming up, and I have set the timer for 10 minutes. The timer has ended, so I'm just going to go ahead and put the pressure thing on, and within a few minutes it should start rocking and I will start the countdown. It has started rocking, so I'm going to go ahead and set the timer for 75 minutes. And at the same time I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit. And it'll take me a couple minutes to find a sweet spot for that. I'm going to keep recording while I'm doing that, but we'll come back when this is done in an hour and 15 minutes. So the timer has ended, 75 minutes is up. cannot open this until it drops back down, at which time then I can take the top off, take this thing off, and open it up and take the jars out. For me, this is like feels like the longest part of the whole process is waiting for that to happen. So earlier in this video, I had talked about how the convenience of having foods canned and ready, grab, add to meals. Another reason why I like getting meat into cans and having it be shelf stable is because of power outages. On the news we've heard a lot recently about power outages and the possibility of rolling brownouts, blackouts. When I was living in New Hampshire, the house that we were living in, we were there for 21 years, and we lost power for like 11 hours out of that 21 years. We have been here for 2 years, and we've lost, due to storm, one was a storm, one was a car accident, someone hit a pole. We have already lost power for longer than that. So to have something that's shelf stable, if you don't have electricity, if the power goes out, I don't want everything in the freezer just to be gone. So to have it on the shelf. So that's one of my goals is in between freezing what's coming up, processing one way or the other, putting up the food that comes out of the garden, is to get as much as I can on into shelves that we have in the freezer, i.e. the deer. Rick's a hunter, so he's gonna go deer hunting, so we basically deer meat is our red meat. So this wraps up day 2 of the Every Bit Counts challenge, and it is 8 pints of ground venison. I apologize, I'm slowing down now. It's 11:04. It's been a long day. We'll see you tomorrow. Be blessed and be a blessing.